this video, I'd like to introduce you to the workflow of creating a project for this cohort within Xcode 12.3. We're actually going to create three different types of projects, and the first one is a playground. And a playground is really just a console application. We're not creating an interface, but rather we're focusing on the code. And this is a great place just to experiment with the code of Swift 5.3 and to try out an algorithm. It's also a great place just to learn Swift. And so if we were teaching CS 150AB, Object-Oriented Programming Fundamentals, with this cohort, we would probably just teach that with the playgrounds and just focus on the language, because that course is not about creating apps, it's about programming. But our two courses, CS 165 and 265, are about creating apps. We're going to use playgrounds really just in the first week, and then we're going to go into creating apps. And there's two ways of creating apps. The first one is using what we call storyboards. You also hear this referred to as interface builder. And this is the traditional way since Swift came around of creating apps and designing our interface. And it's very much of a drag and drop approach, much like if you've gone through C# and we've used WinForms in that course. Be very similar. We're going to create our interface and then we'll program it. And the majority of what we do in this course currently is laid out using storyboards, because we've been teaching this course for a few years, and that's the traditional way, and it's still a very valid way. With the introduction of Xcode 11 and iOS 13, there was the introduction of Swift UI, Swift User Interface. This is a programmatic way of creating our interface. And as a programmer, I like that. But I also do like the visual aspect. And the cool thing with Swift UI is there's a previewer, so as we programmatically create our interface, we can get a preview of what it's going to look like visually. Swift UI is definitely the future of iOS app building. So why not just teach Swift UI and forget storyboards? Well, one is if you want to design anything for an older phone or older iPad that maybe hasn't been upgraded to iOS 13 or higher, you've got to do it through storyboards. And also Swift UI is fairly new. It's still a little bit buggy at times. So I'm not sure that's the only approach we should teach at this point. So we're going to teach you the storyboards, but I want to introduce you to Swift UI, and you can basically do all your assignments using either storyboards or Swift UI. So I want to do a project in all three workflows. And the project I'm going to do is just a simple circle calculator where the user provides a diameter, and we're going to find the circumference and the area and report that back out to the user. So we know our formulas for a circumference is the diameter times pi, or 2 pi r, or 2r pi, twice the radius times pi. And then the area is pi r squared, the radius squared times pi. So we're going to do this with playgrounds first, and then the next video I'll do it with storyboards, and then we'll do a third video which we'll do it with Swift UI. So let's jump over to Xcode. I'm going to start Xcode by clicking its icon on the dock bar. If you don't have it docked, you can go into your Launchpad and find Xcode. Double click. And it comes up with the splash screen. We've got a couple options here that we can create a new Xcode project. This is going to be for creating an app using either storyboards or Swift. We can also clone an existing project, so if we want to create another version of that. Or we can open an existing project and modify it. I don't want to do any of those, so I'm going to simply close the splash screen, and to create a playground, I'm going to go to the File menu, choose New Playground. And we're going to create a blank playground for iOS. I'm going to give it a name. And I'm going to call mine Week 1 Circle Calculator. Notice the extension is a .playground. Choose where you want to save it. I'll click Create. And here then is my playground. I'm going to pull it up. By default, playgrounds import UI kit. The UI kit is what allows us to use UI storyboard in an iOS app. But while we're not creating an interface here with our playground, UI kit also includes some things like math classes, and we are going to use a function to square a number. And by default, we get the hello playground string. And if I simply click this little play button here, you'll notice that we get hello playground over here on the right-hand side, and showing us that value is being assigned, basically. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. So I want to modify my code here. So playground is nothing more than a Swift file that is interpreted when we run it. I'm going to start by adding a couple comments here. My first comments, I just like to put the name of my file. And then another comment. Notice the comments are preceded by 2 slashes. And I'll put my name and the date. Today is Sunday, 31st of January, 2021. Now we can also do block comments, and block comments are created with a slash asterisk. And with the block comment, we can create multiple lines. And I like to put here what my project performs. So it's going to calculate the area and circumference of a circle given a specified diameter. I don't want this hello playground code anymore. We're going to retain the import UI kit. We're going to create a constant called diameter. We're going to type this as double. And we're still going to say it equals 20.0. Then we'll say let radius. Now we don't have to type everything. Swift will auto type items. So if I take a double and divide it by a double value, I will get a double value. So I can assign to radius the value of diameter divided by 2.0, since the radius is half the diameter. Same way, we're going to say let circum equals 2 times the radius times, and pi is a constant of the double class. Now I can also add a comment at the end of a line that will be ignored. So we're just going to say pi equals 3.1416. So through the magic video, I'm simply going to jump ahead and show you the rest of the code and not have to watch me type it in. So I have another constant called area. It's a double value. It's going to use the function of pow, where we specify the number that we want to use exponents on. So I'm going to take the square of radius, multiply that by pi. That'll give us the area. And then we use a print statement. And here we're using some interpolation or print statement. It's just a string. But within the string, we can do a backslash, and then in parentheses, string, parentheses, format, colon, and how we want to format the number. So this string of %.2f will give us a floating value with 2 decimal points. And then comma, and the value we want to place there is diameter. Would have a circumference of, and again, I'm going to interpolate the value of circum to 2 decimals, and an area of, and again, interpolate area to 2 decimals. So once again, I'm going to click this little play button here, and we'll see it run. So over here on the right hand side, we see the values that are being assigned or calculated. So 10 is half of 20, that's our radius. The circumference is 62.831, and the area is 314.159. And then we see the print value that's being generated. So I can click the eyeball for the quick look and see a little further version of that print, or even better, I can click this show results screen to the far right, and it brings up an area down here that shows what that value would be printed out. I can also see it printed out at the bottom. But here I can stretch this out and see that a circle's diameter is 20.00. It would have a circumference of 62.83 and an area of 314.16. Now if we change our value here from 20 to 10, and I run this again, you'll see the values here have changed in my output, both here on the quick look and at the bottom. So that's how we create a playground to work with our Swift code, and we can use this to test our code maybe in a very quick way. So we'll do playgrounds in the first week of the class, but then we'll get into creating iOS apps with storyboards, and we'll also look at doing it with Swift UI. So in the next video, we will go through the workflow of creating an iOS app with storyboards. One last thing, of course, always remember to save your file. You'll have a few assignments the first week, and you will create some playgrounds. You'll take that playground file and you will upload it to Canvas for grading. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the iOS App Development Cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.